Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. It is your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today, we're discussing a lovely Rolex Oyster Perpetual Day-Date in 36mm Everose Red Gold. This is reference 118235. The timepiece, 36 in diameter, 12.2mm thick from lug tip to lug tip, just the case, 43.1mm. If we include the end links of the bracelet, it is 47.1mm across the wrist with a 20mm spacing between the lugs. We'll throw it on my 16cm circumference wrist, and it's a good match. This is the original size of the Day-Date, as launched in the mid-1950s. It was considered a man's size back then, but today it's very much unisex. You can see how the lugs come nowhere near the edge of my wrist, and that equally evident from over the top. The watch is flat enough to slide underneath the cuff, and I would recommend this watch for a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference. It's nicely counterweighted by the bracelet. Throughout history, this watch has been known as the Rolex President or Presidential. In fact, it's always been called the Day-Date, and President was always a nickname. But the bracelet, which was created with the original watch in 1956, the bracelet is called the Rolex President. It's a 3-link design, but the link cross-sections are shorter than the Oyster, which means there's a little bit more flexibility to it. And it vents better than the Oyster, too, because of the gaps between the links. It has a conforming end link to mate it to the case. It has a pronounced taper from the case down to the clasp. Centers are polished, outer faces are polished, shoulders are satinated, and removable links on both sides of the clasp are fixed in place using screws. The clasp is thick gauge rose gold, and you can see it is the famed crown clasp, the only visible sign of the partition between both sides, the 5-point coronet. Also, it's a more sophisticated version. In the past, pre-2000, these would have had snap-shut friction fit clasps. You can see how there's actually a pivoted hook that goes on top of a beak, and the two things combined snap shut and require that you actually lift and unlatch the clasp before it opens, so it's more secure than in the past. Rolex has its own foundry, it makes its own alloys, and since 2005 it's used a red gold alloy that it calls Everose because it has more copper to make it redder, and then it has platinum too, which helps to prevent fading of the redness over time. So rose can turn into pink, can turn into yellow, red can turn into rose. This is red gold, very dark, and it's going to stay that way. We have a screw-down crown, oyster case back, 100-meter water resistance. You can see this is a twin lock crown in gold because it has 2 dots. The symbol on a Rolex crown will always tell you the material and the type. We have a faceted bezel. Faceted bezels like this, historically on Rolex watches, indicate precious metal, and you can see the facets are still well defined, indicating that this watch has lived a charmed existence. On the dial side, we have a lovely rose gold metallic sunburst dial, faceted rose gold baton style hands with a lancet style seconds hand. We have rose gold individually applied indices, on top of which brilliant cut and baguette gems have been set, and then we have matching rose gold day and date discs with a small railroad track outboard for reading minutes and seconds bearing tiny Roman numerals radially arrayed. Now the watch has a hacking or stop seconds function, so you can set it against a reference time, and this is a double quick set, so when you put the crown in its intermediate setting position, you can double quick set the date, but also the day. Very handy, that double quick set. Inside the case, Rolex manufactured caliber 3155 bidirectional automatic winding 48-hour power reserve, certified as a Swiss chronometer. It has a full balance bridge and a free sprung balance for shock tolerance, has a handmade overcoil hairspring that will allow the watch to keep excellent time in any physical position with respect to gravity. That's the advantage of an overcoil in any position, concentric breathing, even timekeeping. That overcoil is made of a blue oxidized niobium zirconium alloy that is highly anti-magnetic. Rolex calls it Parachrome Blue. The watch beats away at 4 hertz or 8 beats per second, pivots on 31 joules. There is a lot to love inside this watch and outside this watch as well. Everose with gems and a movement that's based on the same architecture as the famed Submariner and Sea Dweller dive watches. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.